This is a 1.5 by 1.5 inch section brass. From this I make chambers for Bren guns, MG42s, Vickers machine guns, Lewis guns, Garands, MP41s, etc. This is a section of brass that is now going to become a firing chamber. I've set it up in my lathe, but you can actually do this with a drilling machine, drill press, or even a hand drill if you're really clever. That's how I started. I have bored through the hole for the firing chamber. I will then tap this to take the spark plug at one end and a compression fitting to take the exhaust at the other. This is my piece of brass in my lathe. You can do the following operations using a drill press or even a hand drill if you're really good, but I'd strongly recommend a lathe if you can. I've drilled the hole through the middle. This will be tapped out to 14mm by 1.25 at one end. This is to take the spark plug. The other end will be tapped out to a 1/4 inch BSP so that it actually will take the plumbing fitting for the exhaust. Right, that's the spark plug in one end and the fitting which will take the exhaust later on mounted in the unit. Now I will drill the holes for the fittings to put the gas into the firing chamber. These holes will be drilled out and then tapped to 1/8 BSP. Right, that's the holes drilled and tapped in the side for the 1/8 BSP fittings. Of course you can substitute BSP fittings for metric if that's what's available to you, but I quite like the old imperial sizes. Now to make the jets up. In the chuck you will see I have put some 4mm threaded bar. This is what I'm going to make the gas jet out of. I'm going to drill a 1.7mm hole in the bar, which will then be mounted in a fitting, which I'll show you later. Can be done with a drill press, but a lathe is so much better. You will see I've actually put in the jaws of the drill chuck on the lathe the tap. I found that this is quite a good way of just making sure you get it nice and central, and if you're a little bit inexperienced with a tap holder, especially the small size ones, you're less likely to snap it or it to go offline. Well, there we are, one gas jet in to the fitting. Obviously when you put the gas jet in, you use a high temperature Loctite to stop it coming out. I think my one's Loctite 648 from memory, but a high temperature one is needed because it's going to get really hot. Well, that's the gas chamber fittings put on. Obviously the gas jets will go in later. It's probably not immediately apparent from this, but they are slightly offset. That is deliberate, as it encourages the gas to swirl around the spark plug, also stops one lot of gas freezing up the other gas jet. Doesn't have to be very much, but just a little bit. Well, there's all the bits just screwed into position. They're not all locked in yet. I will do that later, but I just wanted to show you what it looks like as we go along. Okay, so there is the firing chamber with its gas jets and spark plug and everything installed. Going backwards, you'll see some 6mm copper pipe going to the gas solenoid valves. Again, it's all done with compression fittings. And the reason why the pipes are bent upwards will become clear later on, as on this steel mounting board will be mounted the coil and circuit board. At the rear you can see the solenoid valves, and they are connected to some of the inlet pipes for the oxygen and propane. They will be crimped on later on to make them more secure. On other guns, depending on how they're built, you can actually put an angle like that one there on, and then a quick connector. I'll show you those later. Okay, we're starting to build the gun up now. As you can see, the spark plug is in. If you have enough room, you can try and use a proper spark plug cap. However, in a lot of guns there may not be room. So what you can do is what they used to do on old motorbikes. If you take the end terminal off, there is in fact a screw thread. Put it on with a nut and a terminal connector. But what you will have to do is insulate it off, because electricity is like water. It will try and spark to the least possible form of resistance, and that may result in a weak spark, which you don't want. Right, made up a nice HT lead end cover, which is pretty waterproof as it's wrapped with self-amalgamating tape. HT lead coming out of it, which goes back to this, which is the small mini coils I use. Really nice little units, much easier to use than bicycle coils and other ones that have been used in other guns. Pretty reliable as well. On the back you will see I have actually soldered on a wire. This will go to the earth because the coil needs an earth to make a circuit. The other wire here is for the power from the circuit board. I'll show you that later. This is the circuit board which runs all of my guns I build. Pretty simple technology, but it works really well and can be adjusted with a screwdriver for rate of fire, etc. I have been offered other units, including ones that were computer controlled and required a laptop to alter. It seems a bit of a waste of time when this thing does the job really well. Okay, I've temporarily wired everything up just to check that it functions as it should. Instead of the trigger, I've just got a couple of wires sticking out of it, the circuit board, so that when you touch them together they will act as the trigger. A bit difficult to do when you're trying to hold a camera at the same time. The noise you can actually hear is the solenoid valves opening and closing, and that's the approximate rate of fire. On the board you'll see a little blue box with a screw sticking out of it. This enables you to alter the rate of fire from everything from an MG42 down to a Vickers, which is what this is going to be. Right, I've attached my test rig, oxygen and propane regulators, and a test exhaust. This is a bit longer than the one that'll be on when I use it. It's just one I keep just to test guns with. Now let's see what happens. Well, that will do for now. Final adjustment and mix can be done when it's in the gun. Just wanted to check that the components were working. It seems okay. This is what an LPG unit looks like before it goes into the gun. As you can see, I've mounted the circuit board, coil, done all the wiring back. I'll explain about the wiring later. They're the gas solenoid valves, the gas lines, and you will have power line coming from it and a couple of wires for the trigger. These are the gas lines coming from the unit. On some guns you won't have this because you will actually put the connector onto the actual gun and mount it. But as this is for a Vickers machine gun and I want these to come out the bottom, they're on a gas line. As you can see at the end, you've got male fittings. These go into the female gas line fittings, which I'll show you later. Right, it's now time to start making up the gas lines. One of the first things I do is modify this regulator. What this does is enable you to lock off the propane at a set pressure, so that any adjustments you have to then make are really on the oxygen, because atmospheric conditions and temperature will vary the way the gun fires. But it's always good to have a baseline on one pressure, so you're only adjusting one at a time. It saves a lot of confusion. This regulator is designed for propane from vacuum up to 16 bar. Now actually it'll only usually run for about 5 to 8 pounds per square inch, but by using this knob you can lock the pressure off to the required amount. Saves a lot of fiddling around. What you have to do is first of all remove this bit by putting it in a vise and just winding it out. The whole idea of doing that is then you'll put two hose tails, one there and one there, so you have the gas line on either side. I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, that's the regulator modified by installing the hose tails. These ones are actually 1/4 inch BSP thread, but obviously it depends on what regulator you use. Okay, that's the modified regulator installed in the gas line. The gas lines I use are welding gas lines, but through a lot of research I found ones that are about half the size of standard gas lines as used on BOC bottles, etc. This is quite important as it takes up a lot less room, especially if you're using it out of a vehicle or want to use it on the run, so to speak. It all takes up less room. These lines are really nice as they also have it built in that. It's called a flashback arrestor. Rather important. In the unlikely event that you actually got flashback through a faulty solenoid valve, it stops the gas igniting in the line and getting back to the gas tank, which for obvious reasons you don't want. as an added precaution, the regulators I use, which again are nice small ones, have built-in flashback arresters themselves. So it's a double safety. At the end of the gas line, you see this airline fitting, gas line fitting, which will click onto the gun to connect the gas. It seals the gas off when you disconnect it. I like using them because it makes it nice and easy to put on the gun. I have seen guns where they are just a piece of tube at the bottom and you stick a plastic or other piece of tube into it to make a connection. Don't really like that, doesn't sound very safe to me. These seem a much better solution, much more positive. One thing on the oxygen one, please do not put any oil, as oxygen, compressed and oil, not a good idea, can go bang in a way you don't want. Here is a standard oxygen line to give you an idea of how much thinner they are. Doesn't look much, but it does make an awful lot of difference. They're a lot more flexible and much more durable. On certain guns I've actually fed these down the inside of my uniform so that they connect up to the gun and nobody sees them. Have a look at my MP41 or Garand videos to show you what I mean. Right, this is the oxygen line. Again, as you can see, one flashback arrestor built into the gas line, and this is the regulator, again with another flashback arrestor built into that. These are designed to be used on small disposable oxygen bottles, which can be obtained mail order. Saves an awful lot of money if you don't have an oxygen account, and the bottles are really nice and small and will go in a small haversack. If you're in a vehicle and have got oxygen already because you've got a workshop, etc., obviously you can use big regulators and big gas lines, etc., but for occasional use and for small use, these are ideal.